Dean Townsend, members of the Continental Boards of Counselor, members of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States, faculty, students, my dear family, friends, and guests visiting from near and far, thank you. The University of Maryland, under the expert leadership of President Wallace Loh, continues to enhance its national and international stature as a leading institution of higher learning. In President Loh's own words, the University of Maryland is ascending. I am grateful for this opportunity to be able to serve at this marvelous institution. Some months ago, it was explained to me that successive deans of the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences have been steadfast supporters of the Baha'i Chair for World Peace. Although I am a new arrival to this campus, I can attest that Dean John Townsend not only continues but also enhances that welcome tradition. Under his able leadership, the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences has continued to rise by consolidating a worldwide reputation of excellence. There is a senior University of Maryland official who is not here tonight, but he played an early and decisive part in the founding of the Baha'i Chair. I am referring to Dr. William Kerwin, presently Chancellor of the University System of Maryland. In the early 1990s, when the Baha'i Chair was struggling to emerge, Chancellor Kerwin served as president of the University of Maryland, and in that capacity, he did everything possible to nurture the chair for world peace. Since that time, Chancellor Kerwin has remained a friend of the Baha'i Chair. The Baha'i Chair and its community of supporters owe a special debt of gratitude to Judge Dorothy Nelson and to Mr. Ken Bowers, who both have served successively as liaison between the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and the Baha'i Chair's Advisory Board. Over the years, both Judge Nelson and Mr. Bowers have provided wise guidance to the Chair and to the University of Maryland. Equally important, they have also helped ensure the financial security of the Chair. As a new arrival at the Baha'i Chair for World Peace at the University of Maryland, I would be remiss if I failed to mention the decisive contributions of my distinguished predecessors at the Chair, Professors Sohail Boshrui and John Grazel. Dr. Grazel was the Baha'i Chair professor for more than 5 years, from 2006 to 2011. During his tenure, he built on the solid record of accomplishment that had already been achieved, while further expanding the scope of the Chair's activities. Among the new directions in which Professor Grazel took the Chair was to organize a campus-wide initiative called the Semester on Peace, which created a pattern of cooperation among various groups and individuals working to build peace. Finally, I must, of course, salute the person who guided the Baha'i Chair from its formal inauguration in 1993 through 2005, Professor Sohail Boshrui. By means of his peerless scholarship, drive, and dedication, Professor Boshrui infused the Baha'i Chair for World Peace with a unique vision that allowed it to make an enduring contribution. Among the numerous national and international awards Professor Boshrui received during his tenure with the Chair, I believe the one he may be most proud of was his receipt of the Juliet Hollister Award for service to interfaith understanding, given by the Temple of Understanding, a leading interfaith organization that works closely with the United Nations, the Juliet Hollister Award is granted in recognition of, and I quote, exceptional service to interfaith understanding. Other recipients of this prestigious prize include Queen Noor of Jordan, former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Mary Robinson, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Nelson Mandela. Ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, I would now like to present my vision for the Baha'i Chair and my assessment of its far-reaching potential. In doing so, I am ever mindful of my sisters and brothers in Iran, who for more than 30 years have experienced social discrimination, official persecution, and untold oppression. Sadly, the campaign against the Baha'is of Iran extends to the field of education. Young Iranian Baha'is are systematically denied access to universities. Tonight, I am ever mindful of their sacrifices. Vision and prospects for world peace. The aspiration for achieving peace has been a central concern throughout human history. Generation after generation, men and women have longed for, struggled for, and perished for peace. In the 20th century alone, it is estimated that some 60 million children, women, and men lost their lives as a result of war and genocide. Even in this, the 21st century, the human rights of more than 3 billion people, about 1/2 of the world's population, are not protected. Some of the human rights violations that prevail today include torture, genocide, ethnic cleansing, mass execution, violence against children, rape, human trafficking, slavery, illegal imprisonment, illegal treatment of refugees, violent theft, the trade in human organs, mass deaths caused by the vicious circle of poverty, hunger, and sickness. Today, every positive or negative change that takes place in the social, economic, or political realm, regardless of its geographic location, is felt throughout the entire world. The depth and breadth of the interconnectedness of the global order cannot be denied. However, the lack of ability and capacity of governmental and social institutions to accommodate the ongoing changes and in successfully addressing new problems is a serious threat to peace and stability. The world is getting smaller, the nations more interdependent, yet inequality, suffering, fragmentation, and disorder are increasing. In this situation, one is reminded of the Chinese proverb, if we do not change our direction, we are likely to end up where we're headed. The Baha'i Chair for World Peace has a unique responsibility to advance an educational process that will create a body of tested knowledge that can be applied to foster the emergence of a more just, secure, and sustainable international order. An order that addresses the spiritual, social, and material progress of the global community. I will say more about the Baha'i Chair's goal and its vision in advancing a new direction and discourse on global peace. However, before doing so, I would like to take a few minutes to discuss two subjects that are key and central to any discussion about peace. And of course, this is in my opinion. The first is human nature. The second are some significant changes that are taking place in the world today. Understanding human nature is essential to any discussion of peace because an examination of what scholars are learning about this subject highlights the issues of education and its potential for building a better world. Both the 19th century doctrine that biology is destiny and the 20th century doctrine that the mind is a blank slate have been rejected as a consequence of the marvelous knowledge that is being generated by the sciences of the mind, brain, genes, and evolution. The psychologist Steven Pinker asserts that nature versus nurture are not mutually exclusive, that genes cannot cause behavior directly, and that the direction of causation can go both ways. He explains, genes do not determine behavior like the role of a player piano. Environmental interventions from education to historical changes in attitudes and political systems can significantly affect human affairs. Today, unfortunately, aggression and conflict characterize our social order, an order that encompasses political, religious, economic, and cultural systems. In fact, many are resigned to the view that violence and warring are inborn human behaviors and therefore unchangeable. Such beliefs are often responsible for and lead to a paralysis of will in all of us, a cognitive numbness, which is not easy to reverse, but which must be overcome. Here, the role of education is vital in removing unfounded views about human nature. The historian Howard Zinn has challenged the view that human nature is instinctively aggressive and violent. In a 1991 speech, he said this: "There is a history of wars and a history of kindness. But it's like the newspapers and the historians. No offense to historians. My son is one. They dwell on wars and cruelty and the bestial things that people do to one another. And they don't dwell a lot on the magnificent things that people do for one another in every life again and again." He goes on to say, "It seems to me it only takes a little bit of thought to realize that if wars came out of human nature, out of some spontaneous urge to kill, then why is it that governments have to go to such a tremendous length to mobilize populations to go to war?" Social and cognitive scientists continue to enhance our understanding of human nature. And I'd like to speak about a couple of examples. In 1994, in a period of about 3 months, around 800,000 people, mostly ethnic Tutsis, were killed in the Rwanda genocide. In the aftermath of this appalling episode, the two sides of human nature, the good and bad, were exposed. We already know and are aware of the heinous acts that played out during the slaughter. However, little has been said about what we have since learned about the role of the so-called rescuers. The term rescuers refers to those individuals who risk their own lives, who actually risk their own lives in order to save others, including the lives of those who were considered to be their enemies. Here, a few examples of rescuers during the Rwanda genocide is helpful to our discussion of human nature. An ethnic Hutu government soldier, despite the danger and threat to his life, saved the lives of many Tutsis by guiding them through dangerous wooded areas during the darkness of night. A Hutu pastor sheltered and protected Tutsi women. And the mosques of Rwanda provided safe havens for members of all ethnic and religious communities. We have also learned about the positive side of human nature from the acts of humanity displayed by thousands of individuals who risked their lives to save others in the 1940s during the Holocaust. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel made the following observation about those who risked their lives to save Jews during World War II. In those times, he mentions, there was darkness everywhere, in heaven and on earth. All the gates of compassion seemed to have been closed. The killer killed, the Jews died, and the outside world adopted an attitude either of complicity or of indifference. Only a few had the courage to care. These few men and women were vulnerable, afraid, helpless. What made them different from their fellow citizens? Why were there so few? Let us remember, Elie Wiesel says, what hurts the victim most is not the cruelty of the oppressor, but the silence of the bystander. The discipline of Holocaust studies offers important findings about human nature. At the Yad Vashem Museum of Holocaust History in Jerusalem, what are called the righteous among the nations, referring to the rescuers who saved Jews, have been honored for their acts of valor. Their actions provide insights that help us better understand human nature. For example, we have learned that at first most rescuers were merely bystanders. They stood by as the Jews were being persecuted, their rights restricted, their property confiscated. But after some interval, there came a turning point, an intersection at which the bystanders decided to act. They no longer accepted the intensifying measures against the Jews. The rescuers then are described as ordinary people, some of them acting out of ideological, religious, or political principle, and others without any such motivations. They were women and men of all ages. Some were Christians, some were Muslims, some were agnostics, some were atheists. Among the rescuers were the educated, illiterate peasants, city dwellers, farmers. They represented people from all walks of life, including domestic servants, diplomats, policemen, fishermen, and so on. Psychologist Irving Staub has conducted 5 decades on research that looks at personal and social factors that lead to helping and altruism. He summarizes his results by saying human beings have fundamental shared needs. These include the need for security, for a positive identity, for a sense of effectiveness, for both positive connection to other people and autonomy, for a comprehension of reality. Another need which emerges, according to Staub, when most of these initial needs are taken care of, is the need for transcendence. This is an aspect of spirituality. The need to go beyond one's own material concerns and beyond the self. When these needs are fulfilled, people are well on their way to harmonious, caring relationships, as well as continued growth in their lives. And he points out that passivity of bystanders greatly contributes to the evolution of evil. He points out that creating goodness requires active bystandership by individuals, organizations, communities, and nations. Given the evidence for the capacity of humans to do good, I would like to share this observation, and it centers on the fact that human beings are not instinctively prisoners of aggression and violent behavior. Therefore, intervention through education and training can positively alter attitudes and change behavior. A final observation about human nature comes from bioethicist Adriana Ginny and biopsychologist James Giordano, who state, as evidenced by history, human beings are achievers. Some are overachievers. Humans show a trend toward not merely surviving, but flourishing. Human history is punctuated by our attempts to break the bonds of biological restrictions and to be more than we are. Having examined what some of the latest research reveals about human nature, I would like to address my second theme. This concerns the monumental changes that are taking place in the world today, which pose serious challenges to individuals, institutions, and our global society, and which relate directly to the subject of peace. Our global community is undergoing great transformations. Our conventional thinking about the political, economic, and cultural components are being tested on every side. In many ways, we have not kept up with the changes that are unfolding before us. Many scholars point to the need for a re-examination of the existing fundamental ideas and theories we use to describe modern society. As an example, sociologist Ulrich Beck states that if the social sciences want to avoid becoming a museum of antiquated ideas, they must engage in a healthy re-examination of the changes at play in the world. In an effort to study realistically the pathways that may lead to peace, considerable attention must be devoted to adapting existing theories that are no longer capable of describing the changing world. By way of example, I will highlight 3 trends very briefly. These are modernity, globalization, often called second modernity, and the third, cosmopolitanism. All of these phenomena are indicators of the sea change that continues to shape the global order. Modernity is another term for modern society or industrial civilization. It lives in the future rather than the past. As a dynamic force unparalleled in any previous type of social order, modernity is connected with a certain set of attitudes towards the world, the idea of the world as an open transformation of human intervention. Modernity is comprised of complex economic institutions, including a market economy, and a variety of political institutions, such as the nation-state and mass democracy. As a process that is or should be open to change, modernity has now evolved from its origins as a Western phenomenon to what is now called globalization, which comes to my second phenomenon, the concept of globalization or a second modernity. This is a widely used term to describe which is by some social scientists is described as a period that follows modernity. Just as the emergence of the industrial society caused the breakdown in agricultural society, globalization has transformed industrial society into broader social and economic relationships stretching worldwide. Globalization is composed of and creates new social networks that can be located thousands of miles apart. Yet globalization, through the communications revolution, has also brought about a time-space compression. We no longer rely on a physical presence, but by means of technology can remove the limitations of space and time. As a result of such developments, we see a significant acceleration in the pace of life. Globalization links distant communities and expands the reach of power relations across regions and continents. It also has its contradictions. For example, although the nation-state still has an important role to play, the world has moved beyond the national and the international. Both the state systems remain, but are being subjected to major changes. Under globalization, the state has not and cannot disappear, but globalization may be viewed as an addition to, not a substitute for, the existing international order. Globalization is not some process over and above the activities of the states, but is instead an element within state transformation. One scholar, Ian Clark, in international relations, describes that we need to face the seeming paradox that there can be indeed an international order of globalized states. The third concept that I'd like to briefly discuss is cosmopolitanism. Cosmopolitanism refers to a set of moral standards for living in a global order. Kwame Anthony Appiah, professor of philosophy from Princeton University, who would like all of us to know that his mother is from England and his father is from Ghana, and therefore he considers himself a cosmopolitan. He observes that today cosmopolitanism is a temperament that is to be found in every continent. He defines cosmopolitanism as the conjunction of two ideas. One, which it shares with a lot of people, which is some form of commitment to the universality of concern for all human beings. That's one part of it. But what is distinctive about cosmopolitan universalism is that it combines that sense that everybody matters. Every human being is important, with the idea that people are entitled to live lives to different ideals, different conceptions of what they're up to, what they think is worthwhile. Appiah continues, so unlike many universalities, cosmopolitans aren't in the business of trying to persuade everybody to be like themselves. We like the fact that the world is full of different kinds of people. However, Appiah is quick to point out that where culture is bad for people, the cosmopolitan doesn't have to be tolerant of it. We don't need to treat genocide or human rights abuses as just another part of the quaint diversity of species. Decades ago, in her famous work, The Origins of Totalitarianism, the political theorist Hannah Arendt offered the following observation about the negative side of nationalism as a barrier to peace. She said, politically speaking, tribal nationalism always insists that its own people are surrounded by a world of enemies, one against all, and that a fundamental difference exists between this people and all others. It claims its people to be unique, individual, incompatible with all others, and denies theoretically the very possibility of a common mankind, long before it is used to destroy the humanity of man. Arendt's vision of a common mankind, like cosmopolitanism's commitment to the universality of human beings, points to the fact that the examination of humankind as a whole should be at the center of our theories and empirical studies, especially in relation to world peace. Knowledge must take us to new ways of conceptualizing the world as a unity. In this way, we can carry out research in pursuit of knowledge that is relevant and valid to our ever-changing global community. In this regard, Appiah places great importance on what he calls the education for global citizenship. Each person you know about and can affect, Appiah says, is someone to whom you have responsibility. To say this is just to affirm the very idea of morality. The challenge then is to take minds and hearts formed over the long millennia of living in local troops and equip them with ideas and institutions that will allow us to live together as the global tribe we have become. And that means shaping hearts and minds for our life together on this planet, beginning with the education of the young. Now I come to my specific vision for the Baha'i Chair for World Peace. Having briefly sketched the barbarity that has formed much of our history, while also recalling the humanity that endures even amidst the darkest moments, we have also explored the nature of the accelerated changes that chisel away and reshape our planet into a future that, from early indications, is sure to be vastly different than anything any of us can imagine today. Here I would like to focus on the role of Baha'i Chair for World Peace, which is part of the mission conveyed earlier by previous speakers, that the chair should be a solution to the world's challenges. And you have already heard about the chair's founding, but I want to just say that when the mission was placed, the mission of the chair was developed in its founding documents, it said that the chair is to initiate public forums of discussing the issues proposed in the statement, the promise of world peace issued by the highest governing body of the Baha'is, the Universal House of Justice. Now, what is this statement? I'd like to briefly tell you some of the contents, just some of the contents that is in this statement. But before doing so, I would like to just give you a little bit of a glimmer of why the Baha'is are so interested in peace and what is the history of this interest. For over about almost 170 years now, the Baha'i faith has taken an active part in raising consciousness throughout the entire world about peace. And I'll start with a story that begins in December 1919, when Abdu'l-Baha, who was then the head of the Baha'i faith, received the communication from the Executive Committee of the Central Organization for a Durable Peace at The Hague. This organization, you may know, was formed by representatives from 9 European countries and the United States, and its deliberations resulted in a policy statement expressing a willingness to accept military sanctions against countries that started hostilities without first making a good faith effort to resolve a dispute by submitting to international arbitration or making some other appeal to existing peace machinery. Unable to attend this important meeting, Abdu'l-Baha wrote a letter to them, and he dispatched the letter by special delegation to The Hague. He praised the efforts of the organizing committee and wrote the following about world peace. And I quote, "There is not one soul whose conscience does not testify that in this day there is no more important a matter in the world than universal peace. But the wise souls who are aware of the essential relationships emanating from the realities of things consider that one single matter cannot by itself influence the human reality as it ought and should." In other words, everyone wishes for world peace. But why don't we have world peace? So then Abdu'l-Baha expands on the need for a comprehensive framework for world peace, one that takes into consideration the many issues that negatively impact humanity's progress, and one founded on positive values. In his letter, he sketches a plan of action that would support and supplement the goal of world peace. This emphasized the importance of applying spiritual values while exploring solutions to social ills, which prevent the realization of peace. The principles and concerns set forth in Abdu'l-Baha's letter, as well as the themes founded in the statement of the promise of world peace, find their roots, of course, in the original texts written by Baha'u'llah, who was the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. In the late 1860s, Baha'u'llah, who was Abdu'l-Baha's father, wrote to the rulers and leaders of the world in a series of letters which are all published now. And these leaders included the Sultan of Ottoman Empire, the European kings, the presidents in the United States, the Shah of Iran under the Qajar dynasty, the Pope, various religious and secular leaders, calling on them to gather together as leaders and resolve their differences in order that their citizens might live under a wise and just government. Emphasizing the changes that were taking place in the world, he described humanity as having reached the condition where it would have to be considered as a single common community. He called upon the national leaders to resolve their differences, find solutions to oppression and injustice. He reminded them of the changes that were taking place in the world, which had for the first time in human history created the condition for one humanity, a common humanity, a condition that required cooperation among the nations and leaders of the world in resolving differences, removing inequality, and upholding justice. Baha'u'llah asked the leaders to adopt a system of collective security based on a shared commitment to stop aggression by any one nation. He stressed the need to create an international democratic elected body representing all nations of the world in order to manage conflicts that arise between states. He stated that an international auxiliary language would serve as a mechanism for promoting world unity, as it would enhance communication and consultation among people. But he went beyond the global dimension of change, stressing the need for the development of values at the personal level, which he said constitutes the bedrock of society, because they relate to the moral and spiritual foundation of a social order. He denounced oppression and corruption, stressed the necessity of trustworthiness and justice, emphasized the need for universal education to include values that transcend all cultures, and said that science and religion must agree. With that brief historical background, I now come to the vision for Baha'i Chair for World Peace. Situated at the University of Maryland, where the key features of the university's strategic mission are innovation, entrepreneurship, and engagement with the world, the Baha'i Chair's central aim is to create a learning community where students examine the complexity that surrounds the vast and complex topic of peace. Learning takes place through a process-oriented, dialogic, and reflective inquiry, whereby the study of a body of knowledge results in practical means for the betterment of the human condition. Here, the relationship between science and religion is central to the pursuit of knowledge and its positive application. In this context of knowledge seeking and application, the agreement between the two is paramount. I say this because from the Baha'i perspective, it is impossible for religion to be contrary to science. Both of them are systems of knowledge. Although science can offer methods and tools of inquiry and learning, It alone cannot define the direction toward which society should move. Rather, moral and spiritual principles must face the scrutiny of science and vice versa. Viewing peace as far more than the elimination of war or the prohibition of weapons of war, the Baha'i Chair draws insights from universal values which are the foundation of an education for peace. Equally important to this foundation is the study and development of a sound scientific basis of knowledge drawn from any and all fields of study that can advance a more peaceful world and greater happiness for humankind. In this context, the study of world peace is more than the elimination of war and violence, which are currently the dominant means for managing international conflict. Prohibiting weapons of mass destruction, as I said, although extremely important, will not move us closer to peace. Rather, peace stems from an inner state, one that is supported by values. Here, the aspiration for peace is an attitude, a will, and a yearning which promotes the discovery and implementation of practical measures for peace. The Baha'i Chair offers a comprehensive framework for working in that direction. There are major global issues which, if not addressed first, will continue to serve as barriers. Although by no means exhaustive, here is a list of but a few of them. Rising global inequality, discrimination and violence against women, tensions and divisions caused by religious conflicts, a growing culture of hate, the scourge of prejudice and racism, lack of universal education, and failure to teach the concept of world citizenship. To address these and many other obstacles to peace, the Baha'i Chair will draw upon a set of values that can help solve social problems. Students study, discuss, and reflect on correlating values with the wealth of sound knowledge that is generated in every field of study. Similarly, values will be examined and their application explored in search for solutions to social problems. In short, the Chair's goal is to utilize the strength that an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach brings to the study of peace. One quick example of what I mean by interdisciplinary. There is an ad that I just read a few weeks ago for a position for a program called Human Dimensions of Global Change. And here's how the description of this ad reads. The Department of Earth and Environment is looking for a candidate trained in political ecology, developmental studies, geography, sociology, and anthropology. The candidate is expected to utilize mixed methods to explore the impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability associated with global change, to include natural disasters, food security, water resources, and livelihoods. That's the direction that knowledge is going in. Staying with the comprehensive framework for peace, the Baha'i Chair will adopt what I call a worldview approach. This approach moves beyond nationalism and particularism and instead embraces a global or globalizing view of peace. Here, perspectives from diverse cultures are valued and evaluated. A network of scholars and international research partnerships will be formed representing multiple views on social problems. The worldview approach significantly expands and enriches the prevailing Western model in the exploration of the possibility of peace. Viewing humanity as a collective and organic whole, this approach will explore the role that social actors and structures play in removing obstacles to peace. The worldview approach is all-embracing in its outlook, examining the disorders that impact all people and the entire globe. It considers the contributions from a diversity of peoples, cultures, nationalities, and perspectives. It blends and embodies the ideals of the East and the West, of North and South. To further expand the reach of the worldview approach, the Baha'i Chair, in recent discussions with Dean Townsend, has begun exploring steps toward the establishment of a global council of peace chairs. The scope of the proposed global council will, in the first instance, bring together, in a spirit of collaboration, the 3 peace chairs of the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences, with their permission. However, in due course, it will extend to other universities, regionally, nationally, and especially worldwide. The Baha'i Chair will assume a major leadership role in coordinating this initiative, which intends to enlarge the reach of the interdisciplinary examination and discourse on global peace. I'm coming to the conclusion. The Baha'i Chair for World Peace is committed to offering students a broad, realistic, and applied education for and about peace. Through a dialogic process of learning, the use of the mind, the expansion of knowledge, and insights into the realities and complexities of life, we begin to imagine a world in which we work toward applying individual skills and capacities in constructing a better world. This is a process of learning that is centered on applying values and knowledge toward positive ends that transcend specific fields of study and career paths. Regardless of his or her place in society, every student, every individual can be empowered to embrace the transformative nature of the education for peace provided by the Baha'i Chair. The ultimate goal of the Chair's teaching and research is to explore new frontiers of learning about peace, pushing forward the horizon and exploring the possibilities before us as its full aim on this journey. As astrophysicist Carl Sagan stated, what distinguishes our species is thought. The cerebral cortex is a liberation. We are, each of us, largely responsible for what gets into our brains, for what, as adults, we wind up caring for and knowing about. The Baha'i Chair stands ready to do its part in advancing a new and innovative discourse on global peace. It will do so through diligent work, collaboration with scholars throughout the world, research and publications, all intended to advance knowledge and understanding of how to develop a better world. We are hopeful, confident, unafraid, eager to labor on a creative path to world peace. Please join with us in this effort. Thank you very much.